My name is Audrey Rosenfeld. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a certified employee assistance professional. I'm the owner of Fully Effective Employees, which is your employee assistance program that's provided to you as employees of your company and to your dependent family members living in your home. You can access us by calling 425-454-3003 and ask to speak with the on-call counselor. If you want more information about how to use our program or the services we offer, you can visit our website at www.fee-eapaul.com. And if you'd like a username and password to be able to enter our password-protected site, which has a wealth of information including self-assessments, articles, resources, and referrals, please feel free to call the counselor on call and ask for that information. Today, I'm going to be addressing the topic of coping with stress, anxiety, and burnout as it pertains to COVID-19. However, many of the issues that we're talking about can be relevant to all areas of your life. So we are all experiencing increased stress during this pandemic. First of all, people are experiencing a tremendous amount of anxiety. It particularly centers around the inability to control certain events related to COVID-19 and a lot of not knowing when it will end, when we'll be vaccinated, and when life will go back to normal. I'm going to address the issue of anxiety in more detail as we go on. Grief and loss is a tremendous issue. We've lost all of the old ways of being. The inability to go out and meet with friends, to have them over to our home, to hug those that we care about, to visit with family members and friends. We've lost vacations, celebrations, and milestone celebrations as well. We've also lost the ability to celebrate the holidays this year, which has been very difficult on those of us who are far away from loved ones. And we've also lost people we've cared about, either whether it's been to COVID or to other illnesses, and having the inability to be able to be present at their funerals or celebration of life due to COVID. Many people are feeling isolated and lonely. Social distancing and the inability to be with others is particularly difficult for those who live alone. If you're working from home and living alone, you may feel very lonely and isolated. And even if you're working but you live alone, not having other people to be with during this time can make people feel very isolated and lonely. Some people fear getting the illness and what that will look like for them or their family members. And most of us are really tired of social distancing and wearing masks. We actually call it social distancing and mask fatigue. It's a lot to have to constantly worry about all the time. Parents are really struggling, and so are their children. If you're working at home when your children are at home, it can be a lot for everybody to cope with this togetherness. And if you have to go to work and your children are at home, childcare can be very stressful and difficult. Many parents are not good at helping their kids with schoolwork or monitoring homeschooling while they're also trying to do a job. And parents worry about the lack of socialization, physical activity, and team sports, and how that will impact their children in the long term emotionally. It's really been difficult. And of course, people are experiencing financial issues. The uncertainty about layoffs, the lack of work, and the worry about whether you'll be able to put food on the table, pay your bills, or your mortgage can be very, very stressful. The University of Regina in Canada developed an actual term called COVID stress syndrome. And they believe that this is actually a thing, that people who are very worried about getting COVID stress, having socioeconomic concerns, that they are traumatized by all that the virus has caused, and the danger and contamination fears, and the sometimes compulsive checking and rechecking to see if they have the virus, can cause anxiety or depression, self-isolation and distress and loneliness, avoidance behavior, and panic buying, which we know certainly has happened in the past. More than half of North Americans are experiencing moderate to severe COVID-19 related stress, and that's a big deal. And about 16% of adults in the general population have severe COVID stress. These individuals are more likely to need mental health services. If you are concerned about yourself and want to do a self-assessment or find a wealth of resources on self-care and other ways you can help yourself as it relates to coronavirus, you can visit coronaphobia.org. So what is stress? Well, oftentimes we associate stress as being negative, but stress can also be good. Good stress fuels us to be productive and to work hard. It creates motivation and ambition, and some people work really well under stress, so they might pull an all-nighter because they leave things to the last minute because they know they work better when they're under pressure. And there's a fight or flight response in human beings, which is really essential for our survival when we're dealing with short-term threats. Think about when you almost get into a car accident and you slam on the brakes and all of a sudden the adrenaline goes into overdrive. That is an autonomic nervous system reaction. When the body feels under stress, you have physical sensations. So when you're almost in a car accident, the aftermath, you may feel your heart racing, you might feel your blood pressure rise, you may be sweaty or hot, and sometimes it takes a while for that to actually go down. That's because your body has had a physiological response to a threat of danger. So back in the day when we were cave people and we were being chased by wild animals, we would get the threat and our body would get superhuman strength to be able to run away from that short-term threat. It's much like we see with animals now, where they do the same thing. So that can be good. When stress is bad is when it causes physiological, emotional, and behavioral responses that impact our lives in a negative way. So I'm going to talk about those responses in a minute, but I also want to go over what some of the positive things that we can do to manage our stress. So we have diversion and distraction, which is those things that we can do in the moment to relieve stress. Changing our thinking. Those are things we can do to reframe a situation or change the messages that we give ourselves. Changing our lifestyle might be doing things that we can to change how we approach how we live daily. And finally, the most significant or impactful is actually changing a situation. And that might require us to make major shifts in our lives. So the physical symptoms of stress, we're probably all very familiar with these because we've had them from time to time. You may find headaches, muscle tension, maybe you're clenching your jaw or raising your shoulders up to your ears because you're stressed out. As we talked about with an autonomic response, you may have sweating, a rapid heartbeat, nausea, or GI issues, which many people associate as part of a panic attack. Perhaps you've lost your appetite or you're eating too much. You know, the phrase stress eating. And if these issues continue over long periods of time, they can lead to significant health issues like heart attack and stroke. Behavioral symptoms, crying, irritability, anger, depression, insomnia, withdrawal from activities we enjoy or other people, and the abuse of alcohol or drugs. So back to the ways that we can take care of ourselves. Diversion and distraction. So deep breathing. I like to tell people that if they're feeling very stressed or anxious, that they should try breathing very deeply from the bottom of their stomach all the way up to the top of their mouth so that they're breathing in as much as they can, counting to a count of 8 or 10, whatever you can manage, holding it for a breath of 3, and then breathing out to a count of 8 or 10. And doing that slowly and deeply 3 times in a row will help you focus on the breathing. It will relax your body and take your mind away from focusing on the negative, stressful event. Imagery and visualization or mindfulness can be very helpful. I like to visualize myself on a beach in the tropics, lying on a hammock in the sun. And what you're doing when you're creating this imagery or visualization is you can call it up at times when you feel particularly stressed. And being mindful and aware of all of the physical, verbal, visual, and other kinds of sensations that you can experience. So if I picture myself lying on a hammock on a tropical beach, I look at the waves coming in and out. I look at the bright blue sky and maybe the sun streaming through the clouds if there's some clouds. And I feel the sand, warmth and soft on my feet. I feel the hammock swaying in the breeze. I listen to the sounds of the waves and the birds chirping overhead. So I'm looking at all of these senses and I'm focusing on that as a way of calming my mind and my thoughts. Other people like to use progressive muscle relaxation, where you're basically training your body to relax from the tip of your toes to the top of your head. And what you do is you tighten each of those muscle groups very tightly and then slowly release. And as you do that throughout your body, it can help you relax and perhaps even fall asleep. Other ways to divert your attention would be to listen to music that you enjoy, to get a massage, to journal your thoughts and feelings, to have some laughter in your life, perhaps listening to something funny on the radio or watching a funny TV show or laughing with friends. Trying to do some yoga or exercises through YouTube videos, perhaps, or in your own practice. Trying to talk to somebody. If you feel particularly anxious or stressed, call up a friend and say, I need to vent or talk. And obviously, if you're in a situation that you can remove yourself from that may be stressful, that can be a great idea, even if it's just to say to a coworker, I need to take a break, I'll be back in 10 minutes. Changing your thinking. Separate your worries from your concerns. Maybe you want to write down the things that you're worried about and maybe some solutions and then put it away rather than letting it permeate all of your days. And things that you're concerned about may not be things you can have any control over. So again, you can write them down, but separate whether there's anything you can do about it. Expressing gratitude is really helpful. I like to encourage people to write a gratitude journal and to try to keep it by their bed. And so every morning or every evening before they go to bed, get into the practice of writing 3 things down that you're grateful for. Initially, this might be a very hard thing to do. You may have difficulty finding anything you're grateful for. And maybe you start with really basic things like, I'm glad I have a job, or I'm grateful for my spouse or my children or the weather. Try to change your internal dialogue. Think about your thoughts and how they impact your behavior, because your language can change the way that you think about things. So if you change your words, your mind, body, and your environment might follow. So your words create your reality. If you describe a situation as a nightmare or yourself as a disaster, then that will probably be your experience. But if you try to describe the situation as challenging or interesting or thinking about yourself as stretched but learning, you may begin to have a very different experience. Changing your lifestyle. Try to eliminate daily minor irritations. Develop a good support system of people that you can reach out to. Create regular rituals, maybe doing your gratitude journal or getting up 10 minutes early and meditating before you start your day, or exercising every day after work. And trying to make time to do things that you enjoy, fun activities and hobbies, and learning to make relaxation a new habit. And as I mentioned, changing the situation is absolutely the most significant thing you can do. And major life changes are not a good idea during COVID. However, you might want to think about the things that you can do to eliminate extra stress, to create boundaries for yourself, prioritizing and saying no if you feel too stretched. And if you think that you might need to change your plans by moving, getting divorced, changing jobs, or school, you can think about how you can plan for that when COVID ends. Managing job stress is really very similar to managing your personal stress, but sometimes things at work are really beyond our control. So you want to identify the things that cause you stress and work together with a boss or coworkers to identify solutions. Talk openly with your boss or your coworkers and maybe your union about how the pandemic is impacting your work, and make sure that everybody is communicating clearly. And again, identify those things which you do not have control over, and then do the best you can with the resources available to you. And again, increasing your sense of control by developing a consistent daily routine. So for example, if you always had coffee in the lunchroom, or you shared your lunch with other people in the lunchroom, or had potlucks, and you can't do that anymore because of the pandemic, maybe you all meet at the coffee shop, sit outside for a few minutes before coming to work, or just create the ritual of meeting together, ordering coffee, and then going to work and having the coffee you bring in, and then planning for better times ahead. It's important to keep a regular sleep schedule when you're stressed at work, and to take breaks, so that if you're working from home, it's important to stretch, get up, exercise, walk around the block, and check in with your supportive colleagues, coworkers, and family and friends. And if you are working at a physical location, it's still important to do those things. If you're working from home, I always say it's a good idea to create some kind of separation between work and home. So maybe putting up a screen or a curtain between the work area and the rest of your life at home. If you're working from the kitchen table, remove the items at the end of every day. If you're working at a desk in your bedroom, maybe try to create a screen or a curtain around it so that you don't have to see work when you're not at work. And really trying to set a regular routine and schedule so that you're ending your workday regularly rather than letting it bleed into the rest of your life and the rest of your time at home. And really focusing on things that you enjoy during non-work hours. So burnout is really sort of an ongoing offshoot or effect from stress. So the similar tips would be part of coping with burnout as they would for stress. And that would be to try to change up your scenery, maybe take a day trip somewhere, go see the woods or the mountains, go for a hike or a long walk, drive your car and sit at the beach and listen to the sound of the ocean, trying to change that scenery a little bit. Identify activities that can help you recenter and recharge physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and setting healthy boundaries for yourself at work and for yourself at home. I like to say it's really helpful to have things to look forward to and to make plans for your future. I joke about writing them in pencil because we all know how many times we've had to change or postpone things in our life over the last few months. But it's helpful to have these things to look forward to. So maybe you missed a vacation. Think about rescheduling it for a date in the future. Planning a fun vacation, a camping trip, or maybe a big celebration with your family for all of the events that you missed, and put a tentative date on the calendar, an idea about who would be included. I also say it's important to give yourself permission to not feel fabulous. The way that you're feeling right now is a normal reaction to a very abnormal event, and you're not going to feel good all the time. The focus is to deal with what you can and to try to make yourself feel better. And again, remembering that how we think and speak about things can be very intentional. So if you're constantly talking about how burnt out and stressed your life is, you'll just make yourself more stressed. So anxiety is really an issue of control. When we feel out of control, we try to attempt to get control. And the more we can't get control, the more anxious we feel. And it becomes a vicious circle. So it's really good to think about focusing on the things that we can control and letting go of the things that we can't. We can't control what others do, say, or feel, and we can't, or the choices that they make. And we can't control things that happened in the past or any event beyond our control, such as when you'll get a vaccine. But we can control our attitude and mindset, our words and actions, how we treat others, and most importantly, during these very difficult times, how we take care of ourselves. So, when you're anxious, you want to change your attitude or thinking. Avoid catastrophic thinking, or what I call ANTS, which stands for automatic negative thoughts. So when we feel anxious, we often like to anticipate the worst situation that will happen and plan for it. So while that might be helpful, it might also be avoided. So let's think about, if you can think about what is causing you anxiety and think about what that might look like and how would you plan for it if it happened. And then once you have a plan, thinking about how likely is it that that thing you're worried about will happen, and challenge yourself to think about whether it's ever happened before. So sometimes when people talk to me about, say, for example, being anxious about public speaking, and they're worried they're going to pass out if they have to get up in front of other people. So what I would say to them is, have you ever done public speaking before? Yes. Have you ever passed out before? No. So if you haven't done it before, how likely is it that you will? Not very. Okay, so then what would you do if you think you're going to pass out? That would be your catastrophic plan. Well, I would have to sit down, or I'd have to drink some water, or I'd have to tell the audience that I was really nervous. So once you know that you can do that and you have a plan and you know that it's not likely, then you can reframe those thoughts into something more positive. So sometimes we go through life with a lot of very negative thoughts, and oftentimes that's faulty thinking or distorted cognitions. So we want to reframe that and tell ourselves it's not really likely that it's going to happen. I have a plan if it will, and it's not helpful for me constantly to be focused on the negative. Also, as I've mentioned before about a gratitude journal, if you can think of one new thing that you're grateful for, up to maybe 5 or more, that will help you focus on the positive. Develop stress-busting thoughts to reassure yourself the rational you does think through life's events, that you have control, giving yourself positive reinforcement, and always trying to substitute negative thoughts with positive ones. So while it might be hard to completely flip it from a negative to a positive, sometimes it's the idea of the process. I'm thinking about my life in a better way. I'm trying really hard to be positive. I'm working on focusing on positive things. Even that process of can help you feel better. So it doesn't necessarily have to be absolute. Remember that the outer conditions of your life will determine your state of mind. So if you can control the internal conditions on how you think and feel, it will in fact control the external as well. Remember, when we're dealing with stress, anxiety, and burnout, and especially as it relates to COVID-19, that everyone will react differently. There is no one right way to feel about what's happening. Allow yourself to feel what you feel, and then find healthy ways to manage your negative feelings with some of the tips that I gave you. And again, remember that you're not alone in feeling more anxiety than normal right now. So when should you seek professional help? Well, whenever you want. But if you're struggling after trying the tips that I've given you, if you're having difficulty functioning daily, like sleeping, taking care of yourself, eating, being healthy, taking care of your hygiene, being with other people, if you're having intrusive thoughts, if you're experiencing physical symptoms of anxiety and stress that do not go away, or if you just need someone to talk to. And feel free to contact us at the EAP for confidential assistance at 425-454-3003. Take good care of yourselves. Thank you.